Thank you for being here. It's Saturday, it's early. We went to the karaoke yesterday night, so thanks for being here. I don't even know how I'm here. So my name is Chiara Bernasconi. I am project manager in the digital media department at Moma, and as you can see here, this is the rest of the team. We have 2 producers, 1 designer, 4 developers, and a creative director who is here in the audience. Maybe you can guess who is who. Here we have Shannon, Darrough, senior media developer, and then Phier, media technology developer. And today we're going to tell you about how we handle exhibition subsites at Moma. We do most of the work internally, so we're constantly pressed for resources and time, even though we're lucky because we actually do have a team in our museum that can work on this stuff. And our challenge is to always make sure that we can focus strategically on what's very important to us, and we believe that the exhibitions are at the core of the museum's mission. So it's important that we take the time to work on them when we're also being asked to handle a lot of other competing priorities and projects, especially these days, revenue generating projects. Unfortunately, we don't always have the time or internal resources or can find vendors that are willing to work within our budget to develop a self-contained website that represent or expand upon an exhibition. This is really the definition of exhibition sites. This is a good example because the Diego Rivera show we were able to really literally almost create 4 sites. We had the English version, the Spanish version, the mobile English, mobile Spanish, and it had a lot of really rich content. So that's why our definition of what an exhibition site is varies a lot. During this presentation, I'll show you also some less involved options that I hope can inform you, like maybe you relate to them or can help you find solutions that are a little bit less resource intensive. So every exhibition gets 1 page within our calendar page with a short summary of the exhibition, an image or multiple images, and then at the bottom the sort of list of all the events. And this is really the minimum that we should have online for each exhibition, and it's not much less than we had online 10 years ago. So where did we start? This is actually, exhibition sites at Moma have a long history. Even before our own website, moma.org, was launched, we had an exhibition website. And this is 1995. This site was created for a mutant materials exhibition curated by Paolo Antonelli. And it was the first of a long series of design exhibition sites. And I find really cute that it was called Electronic Project, with a little link over there. So in the beginning, exhibition sites were a series of static pages with introductory text. Looked a little bit boring, a selection of images, you don't see that, but very little interpretive text in general. And this is in 1997, this is the site that focused on a particular body of work by de Kooning and how it looked. So 13 years later, this is as technology changed, this was built in WordPress. We did a site for the de Kooning retrospective, and as you can see, the site has much richer content with focus on themes, timeline, and a focus on methods and materials. So in some ways, as the programming, the site has followed the development and life of the artist. So since then, every year the number of exhibition subsites increased, and as the size of the department, we were really, depending on the years, able to work on between 20-40% of the exhibitions had an in-depth website. These are some of the 18 sites that we launched last year. And it's important to note that every case really needs to be looked at individually. Each curator's approach, the timing of the opening, the closing, the role of marketing, and of course budget are always important factors in determining which tool we're going to be able to use for exhibition sites. So we said that we can't always have fully developed sites for each exhibition, such the one that I showed you, Rivera, or the de Kooning. Sometimes different challenges require different solutions. So I'm going to show how we dealt with different issues for some of the exhibitions. So the most popular case is what do we do when there's no budget allocated specifically for an exhibition site? This is an example of temporary rotation of the collection, and you can see how we can create an object package we call like grouping COGUP. You know about this. We can create a grouping of works that are in the exhibition and that are already in the existing collection template, and it works well in this case because again, it's reusing something we already have, but specifically for ongoing rotations of the collection. Another option is to use a slideshow. We recently made a reusable modular slideshow for the exhibition for which we don't have a budget. It's good because we can just plug in on the calendar page, and in a few hours of work with our freelancer help, we can get the highlights of the show on the website. And the good thing is that this is also a flexible tool that we can plug in different areas of the site. It comes in handy, especially when we want to display additional content for specific audiences. We launched recently, actually a year ago, not so recently, a members-only area of the site, and we use this slideshow to preview the content for the members before the show opens to the public. Sometimes we just have, it's bad timing. We have multiple shows opening at the same time. We don't have enough people that can work simultaneously on these multiple shows. So, or in other cases, we have different departments that actually have different similar needs. So we just recycled. This is a template a standardized template that was built by Darrough Media, and I'm looking, Jack is in the audience, maybe not, he was partying yesterday. So we built it for prints and illustrated books. Originally, the first one was Impressions from South Africa, reused it again and again, but also later used it for another department that needed sort of quick help. The main thing is to really show curators that combined efforts and like shared resources is actually a good thing, and we can basically reuse the same resources. In this case, we had to deviate from the template because we had an audio piece that we had to put in the template. So I guess the question is always like finding a balance between trying to keep the exceptions as minimal as we can, but also make sure that we're meeting the needs of the curators. Sometimes we have shows that already have information disseminated in various parts of the site, and it's just a matter of pulling them all together. I see some education people here that might remember this print studio. This happened, the show opened in conjunction with the other exhibition that I showed you print out, lasted only for 2 months, and Dan was able to pull blog posts, calendar events, and some links together in this template that is really reusing the blog, our current Moma.org template for the blog. And more effort wouldn't have made sense for a 2 months show, but this was a good way to pull in all the information that were already online. Sometimes we have very scholarly information. We have exhibitions curated by Library and Archive, and they have a smaller audience. They tend to be mostly resources for scholars. And for them, we built a really, really simple template, trained the Library and Archive staff so that they could actually put in their content, and of course, after checking before it's made live, we were able to put up some resources that are really important for scholars for years to come, but that get pretty limited traffic. Sometimes we just have 2 weeks to build something. This is the case of Foreclosed. We had great graphics, relevant topic that we were excited about, but no budget. And with 2 weeks left before the opening of the show, this was really Dan and Shannon's labor of love, as they call it.
I love child.
Production time was really only 1 week, so that's weird. But it was supposed to be a pretty small site. It ended up being not so small. Part of the issue is that curators, the sites are always the last thing that we build after installation, after the catalog. There's not a lot of time, so it's like a couple of long nights. And when we get content very close to the launch date, sometimes it leads to surprises. Sometimes we have too much time and too much content, and this is when we have like large research projects that where we are meeting with the curators so early on, and it gets tricky because technology changes. When something that might work 1 year is not going to work when the site is launching, maybe in 2 years or something. And also the risk of unwieldy growth of content increases, and also curators change their mind with time. So this is the case. Someone in the audience might recognize this. German Expressionism was a wonderful project, a multi-year project Maggie worked on, and included imaging of thousands of works during a production time of more than 6 months. So you can imagine in 6 months, actually in a year at least, of back and forth, how many things change. And in these cases, I think that maybe the best thing is to try, if possible, to create multiple phases for a project. This is also something that happened with Louise Bourgeois, Catalogue Raisonné, just soft launched. And this is a pretty rich site that I kind of wanted to show you because of these hairy spiders, where you can actually compare different iterations. Pretty cool. And again, this is about sort of responding to ideas. The curators, again, change their mind along the way, and then we need to respond to that. Sometimes, I mean, I don't know, is there ever too little content? But sometimes it's actually a good thing, because it leads to these projects where, because of a combination of having too little content to show and different motivation for building a site, we are able to really engage the public in a different way. So historically, we've been building exhibition subsites for curatorial departments, but lately we've been doing them for marketing as well, and the idea is really to involve the visitor in a more active way online. For example, for the World Motion Picture Show, Shannon is going to talk a little bit more about it, but we didn't have rights to show the screencast videos by World that were part of the show. So it was a great opportunity for us to actually invite the public to submit their own screencasts. And we got some really cool stuff that Shannon is going to show you. F111 was also a show that included one very large work. So we decided to include a social component to collect comments on the topic related to the work. And that was also something that Dan worked on, and he's going to talk more about it. I thought it was going to be helpful for you all to, know what we have found out about what makes a site popular. It's very valuable information so that we can strategize for the years to come and plan ahead on where to focus our efforts. So every fiscal year we do some digging around in Google Analytics, or we try to. This is just an example to show that the top exhibitions in 2000 for the sites that we launched in 2001 were these 6, and we tried to figure out why, and looked at some of the reasons why we actually do these sites, Shannon will talk more about this, is of course the generation of traffic. And you can see here that they are responsible for some spikes, even though the reality is that you have to have great programming in order to also have great traffic. So it's a combination of the two things. And in spring of 2010, that was like the perfect storm where we had great shows happening at the same times with, we believe, great exhibition websites too. And just as a note, if you're curious, in the past 2 years, the exhibition sites were around 10% of the overall traffic on Moma.org. So what makes an exhibition site popular? Last year, we launched Talk to Me in New Photography, and we're #1 and #4 on the traffic ranking. And usually sites that involve multiple designers, multiple artists who are still alive, especially, and are Googled, and we get a lot of referral links, have a higher traffic. Other of the most popular sites are the educational ones. German Expressionism, you can see here in the graph, the traffic is a little bit less when after the show closes, but it's still steady because of researchers and students that are going to go back and find more resources there. And actually, this is not an exhibition site, but it's always good to remember that even though we launched this now 11 years ago, it's still one of the most popular sites because it takes a really complicated topic and it breaks it down and in very easy steps with interactive animations. And when for some reason it went down, like teachers would write us immediately saying like, what's happening with what is a print? Please take it back. It's wonderful. We need it for our students. And then finally, the last category of sites with the most traffic are the ones that actually have like really famous artists, like the most, the favorites. So de Kooning, Picasso, Rivera, good examples. And now, how do we make this happen? I always like to include a slides about our backtracking system. We try different things. It's a little bit like a relationship, like we have to stick to it to see if it's going to work, but then we want to try something else. So like a great metaphor for the backtracking system. We tried really a lot of different ones, and we haven't found the perfect one. If you guys have the perfect one, talk to me. This is the latest thing that we tried is ACE project. I think the Met at some point used it. Pivotal Tracker is another one. But please talk to me about this because I'm always searching. But the reality is that my personal solution is the 3 Ps: Prosecco, panettone, and pizza. And it's very helpful to know which pizza to order, usually for the guys the day before the launch. And now, after talking about, sorry, I'm showing all the stuff that I'm not supposed to show. We're gonna talk about pretty pictures because that's what makes our sites exciting.
Hi, thanks for coming so early today. It's a little painful, but I hope it is worth your while. I'm Shannon. I'm the senior media developer on the team. I do the visual side of things, the interface and visual design. I'm called a media developer because we have kind of ambiguous titles because we all do a bit of everything. I'm going to go over a bunch of our past projects, some of what I consider highlights. How many of you guys have seen exhibition sites that we have done? Oh.
That's like almost everyone.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. So maybe you are going to see some stuff that you've already seen before, but it's going to be great. So I was going to just talk about design, but when I was going over our back catalog, there was so much other cool stuff to point out that I thought it would be fun to broaden the topic a little, or broaden the focus. So let's say it'll be design-ish plus a whole lot more. I'm going to go chronologically, As Chiara mentioned, we've been doing these sites for years now, for a long time, but I'm going to start in 2008 with Design and the Elastic Mind. This was a Paola Antonelli show, and it was about how design helps us cope with change and scale. And we don't have a formula for making these. The approach will depend on the scope, the timeline, the budget, the schedules, etc. The one constant is we always meet with the curator at the outset. At that point, we'll figure out whether we want to do it in-house or out-of-house. We'll talk about how much work the curator will be able to put into the project, which is very important. We'll talk about ideas and concepts and preferences, kind of all the basic nuts and bolts. And so Paola's shows are always really, really involved. So with her shows, we always go with an outside studio. The question at this point was who to go with. So we were looking at dozens of candidates and a myriad of portfolios. And then she saw this, this one little page. So she made her decision about who to go with, and that was her biggest show to date, based on bouncing balls. But luckily they were Yugo Nakamura's balls. He did this site for us. It's a really fantastic site. Most curators won't make impetuous decisions like this, but that's one of the great things about working with Paola. This site was a bit controversial when it came out. Our Facebook comments lit up, and there was a kind of a fun exchange to watch from our users. But it did receive a lot of attention, it received a lot of love, and it won a ton of awards, in addition to being a bit controversial.
What was it that was controversial?
Usability. So, the thing is, Paola looks at sites as almost a piece to be included in the show, as opposed to just a document. And so she likes the interfaces to be challenging. I mean, there are basic things it has to do. It has to be searchable, has to have an index view, has to be bookmarkable. But other than that, she encourages people to kind of go for it. And she embraces the controversy. It's, it's kind of very Paola. So also in 2008 was Take Your Time, Olafur Eliasson. This was a mid-career retrospective of the Danish artist, and I think it was at SF MoMA before it came to MoMA. This was curated by Klaus Biesenbach. So Eliasson's art is experiential, it's immersive, temporal. You have to walk through it to understand it. For the site, we wanted to show the visitors' experiences in the works. We wanted to show them kind of in the wild. But what we didn't want was this. These are great, but Olafur's practice isn't about, or capturing Olafur's practice isn't about having people pose in, strangely lit rooms. We wanted things to be more frank and more candid. So how do you portray experience? We had the idea of documenting visitors' journeys through the exhibition from their perspective. We were thinking that the first iPhone had just come out, so we were going to use that. But the first iPhone's camera is crap, so we went with this phone here. This is called a Nokia phone, if some people remember that. It's a Finnish company. This is the N82. It had one of the best cameras at the time on a phone, Zeiss lens. It took really nice pictures. So we hacked it and we strapped it onto our visitors. Here's a screenshot of the site. You can see, I think you can see the little Nokia dangling around the guy's neck. Kind of like primitive Google goggles. So what really worked well here is that users could not control the camera. It shot at random intervals. They just wore it, and instead of posing, we got them kind of, going about their business. And the images were instantly uploaded to Flickr, and they appeared on the site that day. And we got some really, really fantastic stuff. and images definitely from the perspective of you know, someone's eyes almost. It's like you're hanging out with your friends, you know? And it was really fun to see people in this exhibition because it was, you know, it was so interactive in a way. And then there was stuff that I had never actually seen in the galleries myself. I had never seen someone with a kimono on. And some people waited long enough to pose and, you know, get their mug on the site. And there were images like this, which I think if they were planned, if we published this while planning this image, it would be really cheesy, but because it's, you know, kind of a natural image, I think it's really compelling. So there are about 800 of these images on the site, as well as a whole lot about the exhibition, including all the artworks, both the ones at MoMA and the ones at PS1, the curatorial statement, artist bios videos, behind the scenes videos, documentation, a floor plan. It's a really comprehensive site. So, Air Not Mick, this was a show that Larry Kardish curated in 2009. So Mick's work is primarily video-based. It's enigmatic. He pulls together loaded situations and characters in bizarre scenarios that are simultaneously mundane and crazy. For the show at MoMA, the artist wanted to base the installation around the idea of intervention. So he placed his works in unexpected locations throughout all floors of the museum, all 8 floors, including the 2 theater floors, and they were in unexpected places like thoroughfares or non-gallery areas. For the site, what we did is we presented it as an intervention on moma.org. So it was injected onto the museum's floor plan. It's a fairly simple, compact site. There are the works, there's the curatorial statement, but what I think is really helpful here is that it shows where the works are located throughout the throughout the floor, throughout the museum, which is really important because of all the unorthodox placements of the work. But what I like most about this site is how well it echoes the concept of the exhibition, which was intervention. So let's go to 2010. Marina Abramovic is a New York-based performance artist, for those of you who haven't heard of her. For this show, the artist is present. She had performers re-perform many of her pieces in the 6th floor galleries. She also did a new performance for the show called The Artist is Present, and that was in the central atrium. And she sat the entire span of the exhibition, which was about 2.5 months, and invited the public to sit across from her, basically just staring at each other. From the perspective of design, what's interesting about this site is the absence of it. It's a really simple site. The artist specifically wanted the site to be undesigned, and we used the identity that graphics produced for us or created. We put that at the top, we centered it, we put in a couple borders, we used Courier, and then the imagery and the text. But the imagery was really cool. We had a live stream of Marina's performance for the entire duration of the piece. And we updated the site daily with portraits of the participants. Marina had commissioned a photographer to do these portraits for her own archive, so we didn't even have to take the pictures ourselves. And it's just a simple, like, out-of-the-box Flickr embed. But they're mesmerizing. So this is Pablo, by the way. And here's some more images, some you might recognize. And there are 1,600 of these portraits on the site. But what grew out of these 2 things was really unexpected. We had the live stream popping up on blogs. And the Flickr images did too. There's Pablo in the bottom row. He sat 12 times and became a minor celebrity. And some people started curating images. This is the Marina Abramovic Made Me Cry Tumblr blog. I kind of like the description. Abramovic sits at the table in silence, and museum guests can sit across from her. Some people couldn't handle the heat. So this is a collection of all the criers. You remember Pablo? And so there are about 90 criers on the site. But the next blog was my favorite, and that is, of course, Marina Abramovic Made Me High. So there's Anthony smoking a blunt, and that's Lou floating in a cloud. There's the artist ripping a bong. That's Aggie gunned in a glass pipe. Yeah. One love. And I think there were some recent cannabis liberalization laws changed in the state. There's this resonance now. So there are more derivatives. That's Marina's chair tweeting during the performance. And it says, if you are curious, I actually never read this. If you are curious, Marina and I met up after Marmaduke. I am staying in her apartment where she will sit on me for the rest of our days. That was just one of many tweets. There was this strawberry shortcake is present. The artist is present video game. And it keeps on giving. Next week, Martha Rosler is doing the Meta Monumental Garage Sale in our atrium. So we're going to be putting up portraits or shots of all the buyers with their loot. So that's kind of Marina-ish. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to be posting these images on a page that Martha named Martha Rosler Made Me Buy, and that's a direct reference to Marina Abramovic Made Me Cry. Martha was really excited about that. So according to Art Newspaper, Marina's show was the most attended contemporary art exhibition in the world in 2010. So I like to think that our site contributed to the success, and I think it did. But if you really want to create buzz around an exhibition, I suggest that you make sure to have naked performers in the galleries. Okay, so we also do sites for our smaller periodic shows. New Photography is a yearly show that features the work of promising photographers. We've created a simple template that echoes the identity of the exhibition. Dan built it in WordPress, and he'll go into that in a little more detail in a second. Here's the homepage. It has a main introduction, and then each of the sections has another slideshow, as well as an introduction and larger format images with captions. It's super simple and very clean and flexible. Here's the following year, 2011. Here's what we have in the galleries right now, and here's the website. So each year the show gets a different color in the galleries. We just apply it to the website, and it's pretty good to go. There's some minor customization we may have to do. Like, for example, we put in a audio player this year, but other than that, the biggest challenge was getting the curators to, that was provocative there. The biggest challenge was making the curators, or getting the curators to agree on that first template, but now that it's made, they know how to plan for their web presence. So Chiara mentioned this site earlier. Andy Warhol, Motion Pictures, that was another Klaus Biesenbach show. It showcased mostly the screen tests and his non-narrative film pieces. For the site, we had the public submit their own screen tests. The curators wanted it to be, they didn't want it to be a free-for-all, so we had very specific instructions about what they could submit. They're supposed to look directly at the camera, they're supposed to sit down, they're supposed to remain motionless, and they're supposed to keep it all under 90 seconds. On our side, we processed them to look very screen test-like. We made them black and white. We muted the colors. We made them 4:3. And so we got a lot of stuff. A lot of it, like these ones, are very serious and adhere to the guidelines very well. Not surprisingly, a lot of them didn't. We got a lot of couples. We got severe couples. We got kissing couples. Couples playing pranks on each other. couples in profile. We got triples. We got 2 triples. We got eating, like apples and ice cream and lollipops, dogs, cats, kids with cats, dolls. This one actually, we couldn't figure out whether it was a doll or not, but we think it's a doll. It's a little creepy, but we got a guy undressing, but that's as far as you went. I think there's some issues there. We got somebody submitted a video of Marina staring at a camera, which I think was part of the Artist is Present not video game, movie that she did, and I thought that was kind of brilliant. We got Andy, and then we got another Andy, and we also got museum employees. I think are you guys in it? Oh, okay, all right. I'm the only narcissistic one. So we got around 700 submissions. I really encourage you to check them out. They're really mesmerizing. So I'll talk a little about how we're approaching mobile. It's obviously a very important thing to accommodate for.
We didn't have sound.
Yes.
There was an
Yes.
explosion.
It's more impressive.
Yes, how cool was that? Okay, so that was the highlight of this talk. I mean, you guys can go, I think. The irony is that I made that animation in Flash. A major thing we did a while back was abandoned Flash, and that was so that these sites would work on iDevices. So generally, we take one of 3 approaches with mobile. This is Foreclosed, the site that Chiara talked about a bit. We did this in 2 weeks, so we didn't really have time to do a mobile version. So we try not to do nothing, and more we do something. We can take a responsive approach where we tweak the layout based on screen size, or we can build an entirely separate mobile site. And this happened recently with the Cindy Sherman show that Mark Kremers did for us, the site that he did for us. He had planned on the site working well. Of course, you plan on the site working well on mobile, and it didn't. It was kind of tragic because it was beautiful, but it didn't work well. So he built an entirely different site for mobile, and I think he lost about 5 days of sleep doing this, but he was really happy with it. We were happy with it, and it's a very nice experience. One of my favorite mobile adaptations is the Sonia Bekovic site that Dan built. What I like about this one is we took more of a mobile-first approach where we conceived the interface to work on a small device, and then we scaled that experience up to work on larger devices and desktops. So we have desktop and mobile experiences that are virtually identical. But it's much more common to have very different desktop and mobile interfaces simply because it's really hard to create one that works well and beautifully in both environments. This site is a good example of that. This was done by Blue Cadet in Philly for last year's show. The mobile has a simplified navigation, and the design, the pages are the tall, scrollable, mobile-friendly pages, but the look and feel of both versions echo one another really well. So Talk to Me is a good example of how the mobile experience can really enhance the exhibition, the in-gallery experience. And I think it's also a good example of what we can do when we really get our act together. Paola curated this show. It was about communication, basically about how objects talk to each other, how objects talk to us, how we talk to each other. It was a great show. It was action-packed, and it was also packed with technology. So much technology that we had to upgrade the gallery's infrastructure to handle more electricity and bandwidth. There were dozens of monitors in the show, showing hours and hours and hours of video content. I think there were around 80 monitors. But that wasn't enough for Paola. So they had assembled a ton of supplementary video, and they wanted visitors to be able to see this in the gallery. Here's one of the videos. It's Sputniko's menstruation machine, and this is from the wall label. The metal device, which looks like a chastity belt and is equipped with a blood dispensing system and electrodes that stimulate the lower abdomen, replicates the pain and bleeding of the average 5-day menstruation period. It is designed to be worn by men, children, postmenopausal women, or whoever else wants to experience menstruation. And so Sputniko is a bit of a pop star in Japan, so she made a music video to kind of demo the gear. And so if you have video content like this, you got to get it into the galleries. So we worked with Stamen in San Francisco on the site, and one of the main requirements, the thing that we talked about up front at the very beginning, was that it had to work seamlessly on mobile. So they came up with this crazy fun site, and it did many things very well, including working well on smartphones. So here's the home page and 2 of the object pages, and there's Sputniko's menstruation machine on the right. So with all this in place, all we had to do was make it easy for the gallery visitors to get to these pages. And we did this by coordinating with our graphic design department. We got them unique QR codes for each and every object label, and I think you can see them at the bottom of the object labels here. Hitting the QR code brought you to the object page, or if there was a video, it brought you directly to the video on that object page. So you also got content from the wall label, like the caption and the extended text, but there was also information that wasn't in the gallery. You got the videos, of course, but also what people were tweeting about individual objects, as well as the show in general. You got to see more explicitly how the curators categorize things, and you got to see related objects based on these categories. And actually there are more categories on the site than there were in the show, and you could bookmark things for later.
What do you think made the mobile experience so successful?
What?
What do you think made the mobile experience so successful in this instance?
Well, it really echoes the desktop experience. So they're like fraternal twins in a way, which I think is really good. There's a whole lot of information there. It was fun to play with. It was quick, which I think is really important, especially when you're in the galleries and you have so much stuff going around. So it went to the page immediately. There wasn't a lot of loading. And that might have been also because we had upgraded the bandwidth in that space also. But you just can't be waiting for things when you're surrounded by people and objects. It has to be really quick.
I would like to think that the site itself takes a lot of stuff and makes it feel very pared down. So to me, it was it loads fast, and part of that's just because it's actually quite simple. It's just really sparse. Sorry.
And we also did a few kind of stealth projects related to this exhibition. And it's a bit off the topic of websites, but the idea was to have the museum communicate with the public in unexpected ways and places. For the first project, we built a bomb. No, just kidding. We built little DIY audio players. And we embedded them in a few non-gallery areas in the museum. We put them in some hallways. On that hallway there used to be couches, so they're actually installed underneath the couches. And then we put them in the second floor bookstore underneath that table there, the display table, and also on some of our digital kiosks. And maybe you can...
I am, I be, I am being, I am talking, talk to me.
So that's, kind of spooky but cool,
내게 말을 걸어주세요. 3층.
So that first part was followed by a second part in multiple languages, I think eight languages, and that said, talk to me, third floor. That was in Korean. that example. And lastly, we got to do this, and I'll just let it play out. So Dan had just gotten, had you just gotten your 5D at this point?
Yeah, this was, yeah.
Yeah, so he'd just gotten his 5D in a fancy lens, and so the cinematography is a little aggressive, you know.
Look at this depth of field.
It's a long clip.
So I was gonna read this to you, but it's from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and when I read it before, it just sounded so bad. Definitely not a Will Smith. What? Yeah. This is karaoke for me right now. This is what I'm doing. Yeah. But can Will Smith make websites? No. So we got to hack our beloved Solari board in the architecture and design galleries. We fed it a bunch of quotes that Paula dug up for us. And at the bottom, this is like a test quote, but at the bottom, it also said, "Talk to me," and the dates of the exhibition when we actually launched this. The intervention took over the board every 15 or 30 minutes. I think 15 minutes, right? Yeah. And so it was a real treat for visitors who actually were there at the time. We couldn't do it all day because Paula wanted it to be more like an Easter egg, you know. But you know, I was there when it would come up during opening hours, and it was always great to watch people's reactions. Some people just didn't realize it, and then they'd be looking at it, and then it was like shocking. So that was great. So if you Google Solari board, just those two words, Dan's blog post about this project is the second result, or at least it was a couple days ago. Dan's famous now. So this is the last site I'm going to talk about today. This is Century of the Child. It just closed, I think, last week. It's a design show that focused on the changing conception of childhood and children. I think that started at the beginning of the 20th century. Juliet Kinchin was the curator. Hello Monday, they're a Danish firm, but they now have an office in New York. They did the site. One of the main ideas that Juliet wanted to express on the site was the idea of, I mean, you can guess, playfulness. And the Danes were very playful. They invented Lego, so yeah. Not Hello Design, but you know, the Danes. So this site does a lot. There are hundreds of works in there, and actually I think it's the biggest show at MoMA to date in terms of the number of objects. I think they're around 700, and I think they're all on the site. And there's zooming, there's sharing, there's a timeline, there's historical tidbits, there's like relations in the works. But what I like most about this is the rich experience, the playfulness. And I think this site and the recent Cindy Sherman site that you saw a bit of earlier, they're done both using only dynamic HTML. They're not done in Flash. And what I think this points to is a fun future. We've had modern browsers for a while now, and we're getting really good at programming for them. So now many, if not all, of the immersive possibilities that Flash has to offer, or had to offer back in the day, can be done without the plugin now. And it'll work on iDevices. So I'm not saying that I'm longing for the days of multi-minute preloads or vertigo-inducing interfaces, but having more tools instead of less is generally a good thing, as long as you don't go bananas. So here's a list of the sites that I went over today. I think there are lots of reasons to make these sites. We're getting the exhibitions out into the world. We're creating buzz. We're getting people to participate. We're enhancing the experiences in the galleries. and we're building rich and exciting interfaces. But the thing I'd like to emphasize, and I think this is especially useful when you're trying to convince curators, because I'm pretty sure I don't need to convince you guys, is I'd like to emphasize the archive that we're creating. So this list shows the percentage of total traffic to a site after an exhibition is closed. And you can see that the numbers are not insignificant. In fact, they're sizable. And because these sites remain up, those numbers are just growing. If you Google Olafur Eliasson now, our site is the 5th result. I think about a year ago it was the 2nd result, so, you know, it's kind of sad, but that's how life is. So that's a show from 2008, and it's still, you know, one of the top results for the artist. Actually, so Century of the Child isn't the last show. There's one show I wanted to bring up here, and I hadn't really planned about talking about it, and that's Rising Currents. This was an architecture and design exhibition by Barry Bergdahl back in 2009. It examined climate change in relation to New York City. We commissioned 5 architecture firms to come up with ideas to deal with possible consequences of global warming. So over the course of 5 months, we documented the research and presentations and the final proposals on the site. So here's the traffic over the last year. So it's actually a reasonable amount of traffic on the small parts, but you can see that there was a lot of interest around the time of Sandy, Hurricane Sandy. And I think that's because there were CNN reports that referred to it and ABC referred to it too. Here's an article from the New York Times last week that details 3 proposals to deal with rising waters in New York. 2 of those proposals are from our exhibition. And I'm not trying to say that our exhibition site is the only place where you can find this information. There is the exhibition catalog, of course. But I would guess that most of those visitors who came to our site last week don't own the catalog and probably wouldn't buy it. And they especially wouldn't buy the catalog if they weren't able to kind of check out the exhibition online before. So maybe they'll buy the catalog now. And I would even bet that New York Times writer spent some time on our site, which I think is kind of cool. So suddenly our exhibition that closed 3 years ago is extremely relevant, and it's up. All the information is up there, and people are going to it. So I'm going to end here by saying that I'd argue that these temporary exhibitions, the physical ones in our galleries, are the most important, or one of the most important things we do at MoMA. One of them. So by putting them online, we're not only making them available to vastly larger audiences, we're also creating something that remains available. So it's available to new audiences and changing contexts. So when the exhibition closes at the end of its run, instead of the only remnant being a listing on our website, or for the lucky few, a gorgeous catalog, it'll continue to chug along happily on the internet, open for all to examine, re-examine, and enjoy. You want to switch? Maybe that's the best way.
Hi, everybody. It's really early in the morning, so I apologize in advance for talking about technology. I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum, but I use WordPress a lot with what we do at MoMA, and I'm going to say it's kind of a powerful but blunt instrument, and it's not going to solve all your problems, but you can kind of strategically insert it into an exhibition site and do some interesting stuff with it. I mean, it comes relatively easy to use for people who may not use a lot of CMSs. Has a huge developer community, so there's a lot of plugins you can use to sort of customize it this way or that way. Excuse me. I'm actually going to talk about 2 specific plugins, and it has a good baseline for working with outside developers. So you say, we support WordPress, you know, you should build your stuff on WordPress, and we'll know how to maintain it in the future. So these are the 3 projects I'm going to go over. There's a lot of other sites we use WordPress with, but these few ones are what I'm going to cover. So new photography, we already mentioned this. It's a very basic reusable template. And so this is the first iteration of the site. And of course, as Shannon mentioned, the color scheme changes. So that's one basic thing that we update. But for those of you who have taught in academia, when you teach a course over and over again, like each time you do it, it gets way easier. So like this year, this site took about a day of work for one of our interns. So it's like super easy at this point. The design is very pared down. So we've got a title, some text, images, and this year, audio material. So, audio material is now added to the bag of tricks we have for next year's template. So it's kind of a growing thing that we can keep improving as time goes on. So here's how it looks like from the back end. If you've used WordPress, this probably looks really familiar. There's basically one page entry for each artist. There's the home page and then a credits page. So this is like an overview of all the content that's in the site. It's kind of nice to have that top level view. So if you edit one of these artist pages, there's the title, there's the text, and here's how we're this is how we're adding the audio material. And of course, audio embed is not like something WordPress has built in. This is a custom field that we've added to the page. And this is custom fields are something that if you're not a programmer, you don't want to know anything about that. Like, just don't go there. It's not particularly it's not a particularly elegant aspect of WordPress. But there's this plugin called Advanced Custom Fields, which makes it a lot user friendly. So I would recommend that, and I use it a lot now for whenever we need to use stuff that goes beyond title and text entry. This is how it looks. It's actually pretty nicely designed for a plugin. Plugins vary a lot, just like any open source project. WordPress has really talented people contributing, and it has like really crappy plugins that are going to take your whole site down. This has happened to us. So evaluate them carefully. This one is good, so I'll vouch for it. And each artwork is just a standard image attachment. You can upload these a folder at a time. So you can reorder them by dragging and dropping. You can add captions, and that's basically it. So another recurring exhibition series is the Moma Projects. These are organized by junior curatorial staff featuring artists and art that is new to the museum. It's a long-running experimental program that began in 1971, and we've been doing about 2 per year. So there's a lot of material that's come out of all these exhibitions. And so we started building a web presence for this in 2002, and it was maintained and added onto through 2010. Unfortunately, the design, as you can see, it looks very 2002. We have tiny type, a target resolution of 800 by 600, and some nice mystery meat scrolling on the side. And pop-up images, which you don't see very much anymore. And this isn't bad as a 2002 website. I actually think in 2002 I probably would have been pretty excited to see this. But 8 years on, it's looking long in the tooth. Plus, it was all hand-coded, so it's kind of a pain to keep maintaining it. So we took the existing site and we wanted to build a more modern replacement using WordPress. Shannon designed it, I built it, and we had an intern dig into the archives and get all the additional content we needed to sort of fill in the gaps where the old site wasn't doing it. So this is what the new site looks like. It's, as you can see, a much wider design. The text is bigger. And there's a lot more, much more generous in terms of how the design accommodates imagery. So, you can have these really nice high-resolution images that show the installations in the gallery space. And this, if you scroll down, it's just like image after image of what was in the space. And because of how this sidebar thing works. So you can see I just switched from the artworks to some interview material. This isn't something that's like hard-coded for every exhibition because we don't always have an interview with the artist. That sidebar can have basically whatever we want in it. So it's quite flexible, and it means, if we have a lot of content for one of these exhibitions, we can add as much as we have, basically. So the archive, I think, is really where this site shines. It's kind of an amazing archive, and it goes back all the way to 1971. So if I collapse this view, there's a little button on the top right that reveals some sortable metadata like the curator and the artist. I don't think this is information. No, I think that was on the old archive, actually. But the archive, this isn't as nice. This is, it's a link that will show that revision of the exhibition, but before 2002, there was nothing. It was just kind of a text entry. So for scholars who want to go back and find more out about this exhibition, you could, but we thought, why not, assemble that content ourselves and make it more easy for people to discover. So like here, Olafur Eliasson has no link. But now, our new one, it does, and it has some images too. So this is how it's managed. Another WordPress page thing. The one difference is we're using these sub-pages. So like the most recent one has the interview with the artist and the works. If we wanted to add a third section with another page of content, we can do that just by adding a sub-page to that. So it's nice, and the nice thing is, like, in a year, when the next, or I guess less than a year, whenever we need to add the next project's iteration, it's like you just go into WordPress and you add a couple pages, and it's really easy.
Anyone can do it. Almost anyone.
Almost anyone can do it. Yeah, you can see, I think on the right, it's not just one name of people who've edited, so that's kind of nice. So lastly, this is a little bit less technical. This is more about user participation. So the James Rosenquist F111 exhibition, it's a little bit unusual, in part because there's only one artwork in the show, but also it was a really short schedule, and we were doing it in collaboration with the marketing department, and we wanted to focus more on user participation. So we do this a little bit on some of our exhibition sites, but this was like the main thing was about user participation. So the painting is a series of panels. They're 86 feet long in total, and it's designed to fit snugly in the Leo Castelli Gallery in New York City. It was completed in 1965, and Rosenquist meant to draw connections between the Vietnam War, consumerism, and advertising. So we built this on top of our existing moma.org page template. In part because of the schedule, but I think it kind of works in this context. We were focusing on user participation too, so we kept it in Ruby on Rails. And we broke out of the standard page template though, in part because the artwork is such a wide aspect ratio, and it also kind of refers to the experience of being in a room that wraps around your field of vision. And you can click on some specific points, and it pulls up like an excerpt from a book written by Rosenquist. And if we scroll down, there's 3 quotations that we added to the main part of the page that are meant to elicit comments from our site visitors. And you can see there's one here that's kind of long. That's a nice rant that you can read if you look into it. I'm going to come back to that actually. So you can click on this text input, or you can reveal the other responses. And what this is doing is when you type something into this box and click the button, it's actually submitting across to WordPress. So we're using WordPress to just kind of harvest comments from this page. And that's it. That's the only purpose for WordPress here. And we can moderate the incoming comments, do spam protection. So how do we get the content back from WordPress onto the Ruby on Rails page? That's kind of like, it's actually kind of a weird problem to solve in some ways. But fortunately, I had built this plugin, this WordPress plugin called JSON API. And this makes it possible to sort of extract out just the data from WordPress and just kind of leave WordPress's templating system off to the side. We're not going to use that. We're just interested in the CMS aspects of WordPress. So this is it's pretty handy. So this is the documentation. It's actually, I think, one of the better documented pieces of software that I've written. This is what the data looks like. This is the most technical slide. So, what happens after a comment makes it into WordPress is our Ruby on Rails page makes a request to WordPress using this plugin and says, hey, what comments are there for these 3 sort of pages? They're not really pages. They're just kind of points where a comment can get shot off to. And then it just draws the page back with the comments that it got from that JSON feed. I hope that made sense. So if we look at other parts of the site, there's other places for user participation. There's, of course, a buy the tickets link. That's important. There's a video. We're highlighting a blog post, and then we have these social widgets, Facebook and Twitter. It's actually a Twitter hashtag search. Let's see. And we also had these, we had the benefit of advertising the presence of the site in kind of high profile places. So this is, I think this is a new special wide format ad placement in the Times. And it has the quotation from Rosenquist that we also have on the site. And there's a little call out in that box that says, go to the website and tell us what you think. Join the conversation was the way we put it. And I should point out that I'm aware of the irony here in marketing and exhibition where the artist is looking at consumerism. There's kind of a nice Ouroboros aspect to it. But really, I'm more interested in this sort of join the conversation call out. I guess I'm a little bit hesitant to use conversation or community, or there's certain words that I think should be looked at critically and sort of sussed out, like what kind of conversation did we actually manage to generate here? And I think the results were mixed. Probably the least useful was the Facebook widget. We got a lot of this. Great. Great. And this guy, he's like, let me comment on my comment. And then, what a great comment. I'll like it. It's not useful. So, not all of them were like this, but unfortunately, it's kind of this drive-by, type into a box thing. You're not going to get people responding to each other very well. And I should say the Moma Facebook page had some good conversations happening. So it's not that Facebook is the problem. I think it's just, maybe it's like the widget's too narrow or something, like the text box was small. I don't know. Or maybe it's just like the sort of hit and run aspect of a widget. If you're in Facebook and maybe you see these names recurring over time, you're more likely to want to engage with them in conversation. And I think the Twitter hashtag was also pretty mixed, but for different reasons. So the first 3 tweets here in this widget, this is not the most recent search, but I think it's kind of representative. The first 3 are about Australian television, about the airplane that's featured in the painting, not about Rosenquist's artwork. So not really useful. Maybe not very useful. And then the second 3 are a reference to some up-and-coming actress, Katherine Mcnamara, and her fan mail address in North Hollywood, California, which has unit number F111. And I should point out, this is kind of a simple design problem. You choose a different hashtag that's not going to conflict with other things. So, that's a lesson that we learned. But, yeah. So here's her fan page in case you want to look her up. It's easy to find on our website. So I actually think the first 3 tweets, though, were actually interesting and in a surprising way. So I don't know if the sound will work here. I'll try it. The sound isn't that important, but I'll play it with the sound.
Well, they were famous for performing the dump and burn. Now the retired F-111s are being dumped at Swanbank. By the end of the week, 23 fighter jets will be buried under 60 metres of landfill. The F-111s retired in December after almost 4 decades of service. They've been replaced with Super Hornets. Some of the fleet will be preserved for heritage purposes. 7 will be on loan to aircraft museums around Australia.
So, the tweet about this television program was not created with any knowledge of Rosenquist's artwork, or maybe that person is aware, but there's no reason to believe that. But it's so interesting that, it actually adds to an understanding of the work and how it's relevant today, or what happened to those airplanes that he was criticizing on the basis that, this is just, part of a economic system, and like, what better way to look at consumerism than how things get disposed of at the end of their life. So to me, this is actually really cool. I'm kind of glad that there was that noise within the, it's noise, but it's interesting noise. And in general, I think the hashtag has a very low signal to noise ratio. It's just like you're tapping into a stream of lots of stuff, and you kind of don't know what you'll come up with. And this is from, I just checked today. This is tagged F111. I understand nothing. I don't know what those other hashtags are, but I kind of it's like kind of perfect in some ways. I don't understand what this tweet is about, but it uses our hashtag. And hashtags are also sort of odd, there's 3 search results right now. Of course, there's more than 3 things that have been tagged with F111, but just due to the technology of how Twitter's search implementation works, we only get like a certain time frame of tweets. So I think had I more time and the experience that we've gone through, I probably would do this a little differently. I'd probably try to selectively pull out things that are talking about the exhibition and archive them. Like we should not just rely on Twitter's search stuff, because the search stuff is not built for museum timescales. It's trying to solve a different problem. So I think there's some good opportunities here to like make better tools for this stuff. And if you know of any, I'm actually quite curious to hear what people are doing this way. So I think the middle part of the page, though, was actually surprisingly successful. We didn't get like a ton of contributions, but the contributions were better thought out, and it's actually pretty good. There's some excerpts. So maybe, the airplane is an example of design, perhaps. We don't collect weapons at Moma, so I don't think we wouldn't look at it as design. And this is from that long ranty comment. I kind of liked how he put it. We are not modern at all. And there's maybe a tendency to avoid these ranty, kind of incoherent, just half-baked enough and typed into the input box, really caffeinated kind of input. I think some of that's interesting, and it's like part of how people actually use the internet. Like rants are part of the internet. We should embrace that. And I don't want just great and whatever. I want the big like I don't know, the manic ones. Those are great. So with that in mind, I welcome your rants or comments or questions. Yeah, that's it for us. Thanks, and thanks again for coming out so early.
I guess the first question I had, with all those WordPress installs, how are you managing that over time?
Yeah, so it's kind of it's a thing that when we started it was less of a problem, but now we have I think we have over a dozen installs now. And every time there's an update, it's like, gotta log in to go and upgrade each of them. We're not using the WordPress, there's a feature in WordPress where you can host multiple sites under a single install. We're not using that feature. I mean, there's some low-level technical reasons we're not using that, but I think we could improve it. And I actually heard from Jackie, who was mentioned earlier, I think, who built one of our sites in WordPress. He's told me that there's a plugin that makes it easy to kind of I don't even know if it's a plugin, but it's something that makes it easy to upgrade all of them without having to commit to that network feature in WordPress. I don't know, this is a kind of a wonky topic, but yeah, maintaining this stuff is, that's the big challenge. WordPress has a nice self-upgrading feature. I'm not like super familiar with how Drupal does it, but it's feasible, but it's maybe a day of work every time I have to update all of the sites. Not a whole day, but yeah.
Right. That's like.
Is that, I mean, does that answer your question? Are you?
Well, it does. I did, because we use WordPress a lot, and that would be the challenge in trying to find a solution. We don't use it for exhibition sites, but I was thinking of using the MV version, and just thinking about how these things look like, what they look like from a maintenance perspective over time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you know what you're getting, which is better than getting a zip file with some PHP that in a perfect world I would do a code review of every line of code that we get from an outside developer, but at least with WordPress, like even for plugins I'm not familiar with, there's usually a URL I can go back to if it does break, and maybe a contact link there that is up to date. So I don't know. I mean, I see the maintenance problem as being every website you put on a server has a maintenance problem. WordPress has a certain kind of weird set of maintenance problems, but they're pretty manageable, I think. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about your mobile strategy and the thinking that goes into responsive design versus independent mobile sites, and in what cases you prefer, M dot whatever?
Sorry. Well, that's something that's definitely evolving right now. We're thinking about, I mean, Moma.org is kind of the thing that we put most of our time into. The exhibitions subsites are easy in comparison because we can just do a mobile version. It can be, if we're working out of house, then that can just be one of the requirements. If we're working in-house, we can strip something down and make it work. And an exhibition subsite doesn't have a massively, or for the most part, a massively complicated architecture and navigation structure to accommodate like the hardest part about mobile, I think. We're thinking about how to do it on Moma.org. We're excited and scared, I think. It's just it's a massive project, and the architecture of that site, yeah, we're trying to figure it out. But it's on the radar. It's a priority, but we don't have the answers quite yet.
So on that note, would you think that when you're making a microsite and making it responsive, would you think of the desktop version as having a different purpose or intention than?
Well, that's one of the questions. If it's the type of thing where we're expecting people to use it in the galleries, then that's when we will like pare things away. But and that's another question, how much we want people to be using their devices in galleries. Right. Sometimes it really makes sense, and sometimes it's kind of sad to see all the work that they've come all this way to be in an exhibition, and they're looking at something that they really could see at home or on the subway or something.
So you should make a mobile site with really long loading times.
Yeah. And so what we're trying to do is Talk to Me was a good example. It was stuff that was supplementary that the curators really wanted the people to see, but it wasn't essential to what they were trying to say in the show. And
I think, for example, we're opening actually a show next week that won't have, the site is going to be working on mobile, but it's not going to be optimized. And the reason why is we decided to prioritize differently. There's going to be a lot of maps, and we thought it wasn't the first priority. So I think every case is different.
And for the Diego Rivera site, one of the things with the differences between the desktop and the mobile is there's a section called Rivera's New York, and on the desktop you can see street view, so it's like the buildings from Rivera's time around New York, and you can click on it and it'll take you into the street view for now of that building, whereas the mobile, when you click on it, will do directions to it. So, the assumption is, you're looking at one on the desktop, and so you just want to see where that is in New York versus something where you could potentially be doing a walking tour. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the difference between, when you do those separate sites, you can take advantage of.
That's smart.
It's actually a slide with that.
I think we're coming up on 10 o'clock, so should we just do one more question? Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges I have in making sort of exhibition sites for my institution is that content, it's always last on the list for curators.
Yeah.
So, and,
I hear you.
content, it's always mining something from a label and then just throwing it on the web. It's never customized. So I'm just curious at Moma, because you've been doing it for so long, is it now something that curators think about kind of, in their workflow of creating an exhibition?
It depends on the curator, but it has changed from something, 5 years ago, it was only a few curators who thought about it at all, and with many of them, it was like pulling teeth. Now I think a lot of them get excited about it, and they put it into their workflow. Still, the challenge is they get involved in installing, a huge exhibition, and all that time that they thought they were going to have suddenly evaporates because of all the problems that will arise. But yeah, there's much more awareness now of the web, and I think there's a lot more kind of excitement on the curators to create exhibition sites.
So is that it? Or if anyone has like one more burning question, they're not kicking us out.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of your talk, so you might have covered this already, but I'm not entirely clear what your objectives are with this site. Because they're obviously a huge commitment and an investment of money, especially if you're working with external companies. And I'm just curious, what were you trying to achieve with this? That a simple, this exhibition is happening, it's at these times, you can buy the ticket here, and here's a brief synopsis of it.
I mean, one thing is, like I was thinking about this, I feel like if you can't Google something, does it exist? I mean, how fully does it exist if you can't Google something and get there and find out about it?
And the calendar page is really designed to do a different thing than what we're trying to do. It's designed to sort of give you the facts about the show. And we're trying to give you like a feel for the show, which is different.
But I actually, at the beginning, we talked a little bit about different ways that we can, we can't always do 30,000, 40,000, whatever, amount of money, very fully developed website. We most of the time have to do like a slideshow or find creative ways that in which we're still giving something more, the highlights, but we maybe don't have the commitment from the curator and our group to actually do a fully developed site.
Yeah, and part of the answer, I would say too, is that the curators spend all this time researching these exhibitions, getting the works together, preparing it, writing text, thinking about this. And the end product of that is an exhibition that's up for generally 3.5 months and a publication that only a certain number of people get. And then it's kind of gone, right? Whereas if you have the exhibition site, not only do you get sort of the visual flavor of it, but then you'll also get access to that material in some way long after the exhibition is closed. So, for me, a lot of it has been about that archival purpose, which is interesting as we move away from Flash and do more sort of user-generated material too, and things that have a marketing purpose. How do you then do a site that has a marketing purpose and an archival purpose at the same time, or a shift? It may be marketing and then it turns into archival.
But in terms of archiving, is the library archiving these sites as well on their servers? Exhibition history, because if it is longevity, that is part of the equation.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that it would have to be archived. And it's interesting that you guys took an older site and converted it to a newer format, so the historical record is somehow transposed, which is interesting because the historical record at that time has been stripped in terms of aesthetically.
Right, no, totally.
So it's interesting to see that sort of mutation.
Sorry, but where does the exhibition catalogue come into this? Do you always produce one for a show?
For most big shows,
I mean, there is a big link by the catalog. I think that we approach them as like different and complementary pieces.
Yeah, the catalogs always have the kind of the long form writings. We're not gonna put those on the site, partially because Publications doesn't want to, and partially because people aren't going to be reading a 5,000 word essay.
But we actually, for Century of the Child, for example, we had a sample, a PDF. So I think we're experimenting a little bit more and sort of like trying things out and see how people are using. And also, I mean, another big thing is traffic. I guess 10% is not huge, but and you know, this is about exhibition subsites, this whole presentation, but I can show you like it's actually, you know, everyone is working on a lot of other things. So, you know, I don't also want you to think that this is what we do, because it's we wish we could do this only.
I mean, on a really basic level, it's kind of like the ebook versus pulp book thing. I mean, it's not that one is a replacement for the others, but searching is actually quite nice, and being able to bookmark things in this certain way, and annotation. And so, I mean, to me, it's like, if you have a permalink for something, that changes how you discuss it. You know, it's like, so, but sure, go to the book, because like you're gonna get so much more out of that thing, probably, because they are much more in depth. But you know, there's an ecosystem that we're plugging into by having these online.
Well, I think they're doing different things, to be honest. You know, the catalogue is, you know, I'm from the National Gallery in London, and that's a very scholarly institution, and they're very focused on catalogues. But I think you're just stretching my mind a bit with what you've done here, because I think we originally started off with these kind of exhibition slides, decided we couldn't sustain them, went back to a very simplified model, which we knew we could get the content for and could get things up online. But what we haven't done in going back that way is what you're providing here as an experience beyond the show, and a whole framework of kind of dialogue around it, which I think is really interesting. Just not sure how sustainable it is. Well, in terms of resource, I mean, you're obviously requesting.
Yeah.
You know, I don't personally benefit from the exhibition budget at the moment. You know, so the web stuff around it is actually fairly unfunded. And these are obviously, you know, very bespoke productions.
Yeah, some of them, but and that's what or those are the ones that I kind of focused on. But also what Chiara was presenting, there were, you know, because you missed Chiara's stuff. Yes, she went over the more basic ones, like our slideshows and our much more simplified templates. That we do when we don't have a lot of time, we don't have a lot of resources. Yeah. These are the fun ones to present.
Can I just say one thing that I think is really interesting? I'm not really a technical person, so when I look at this though, I think about the engagement piece, and I also think about how you guys, it's not just documentation, you guys are actually, I mean, do you guys consider yourself artists? Because I now consider you artists. Like, you're contributing to the collection. That's the way I see it.
We didn't pay her.
We're getting our beer later though.
I mean, do you ever feel like you cross that line of maybe beyond developers and designers and in this world of art making? Because I think...
I would say it's more design, actually. I think, first of all the curators, except for maybe Paola, want something that's designed. In fact, one of the challenges is not stepping on the art that we're presenting, because then, I mean, we're more of the white box, you know? But Paola actually lets her designers and encourages her designers and actually chooses designers who will go a little beyond that. But most curators do not want that at all.
Well, part of the thing too is because they tend to follow the identity of the exhibition, not the museum's overall identity, there's an opportunity to be more visually exploratory, you know what I mean? Both in terms of interfaces of that whatever time period, but also in terms of design. And so, you know, I think these have won lots of awards because a lot of them are kind of interesting from a design and interactive design point of view. So I think with that, in that respect, yes. But
well, that's how it was okay, yeah.
Oh, well, I would say, I mean, I actually do have an art practice that I do separately, so it's like, I do confront that issue, but, you know, it's important to have a distinction. Like, when I'm at work, I'm at work, and and sometimes when I do get an opportunity, like the Solari board, which, you know, if Paola had commissioned me to make that in an art context, I would have been like, yeah, that's what I want to do. So it's like sometimes you get to indulge it, but it's always in service of what we're actually trying to do. So I actually think there's something kind of tragic about like the artist in the museum, and like the whole idea of it is sad to me, but I also, I like working in this way also. It's like, this is something that I'm doing anyway. I love doing it, for the museum also.
Thank you, guys.